Hey viewers, this is part 2 of my detailed hands-on review of the Sony A7 IV. In this part, mostly video, along with burst shooting. There's a table of contents in the description below to find the part you're looking for, or to skip back to part 1, which was mostly about stills. This section is recorded on the A7 IV 30-frame H.264 all-intra at 300 megabits using S-Log2. Then, with the DSC Labs Chroma Selfie as a guide, and my shirt, I used Final Cut's S-Log2 LUT and some color grading to fine-tune. The A7 IV is well equipped and capable for continuous burst shooting, and while it's not Sony's best, still very good. Drive mode settings are high, rated at 8 images per second, high plus, 10 images per second, but without real-time display. Low does 3 per second, medium saves 6. Now, the manual only indicates buffer limitations when using uncompressed RAW plus JPEG or HEF. I configured 33 megapixel uncompressed RAW plus JPEG to a freshly formatted CF Express Type A card with 700 megabyte speed. At those settings, an 80 gig card holds 774 images. I set mechanical shutter, electronic front, and all manual settings. And with high, I ran for over a minute, never heard the shutter slow down. The buffer seems inexhaustible. But when I counted, the frame rate was 6 per second. I also ran high plus for over a minute with the same results. It never appears to slow, but still only resulted in 6 frames per second. I thought maybe the shutter, but the A7 IV doesn't care if I use the mechanical or electronic shutter. And by turning off RAW and recording only JPEG, I got the promised 10 frames per second. Combining burst with continuous AF, I set the Brio train to get to the lens's closest focus distance before turning. And I had more success with tracking spot medium than with touch tracking. Before shooting, focus follows the train in, converting to face detect, and then eye as it identifies the character. I expected to be impressed, and I was. Shooting at high, the flicker is disconcerting, but focus seems to stick. Then high plus, now you see the last image taken instead of the live image. I did a bunch of passes, each with 50 to 60 images. There were always a few misses, 5 consecutive images in this go-around. So as an overall percentage, about 90% got it, which is not bad. And I'm willing to accept some of the blame, as I'm pretty sure that I will improve with experience. Menu configuration keeps stills and video settings independent, and that's very useful if you are a hybrid shooter like me. So, before you switch to video, in the menu, set up the camera to separate stills and video. I also set record with shutter on, so then when you switch, the settings will return. You'll also want the Gamma Display Assist on, probably leaving the assist type at auto. And for video, I'm always looking for the largest resolution and the highest data rate. The A7 IV supports 16:9 in 4K and HD 1080. I'd always prefer the best codec, that's H.265, called XAVC-HS here. That codec maxes to 200 megabits with 10-bit and 422 using long GOP. At 60 frames, my 80 gigabyte CF Express card will hold 48 minutes. 30 frames isn't an option. At 24, the max data rate is 100. I used the 60 frame settings in part 1. Now, the other difference between 24 and 60 is the crop. This is the scene at 24. This is the crop at 60 frames. Now, to access all intra, which I prefer for editing, use the XAVC-SI 4K setting. Data rates here go up to 600 megabits, still 10-bit 422. 24, 30, and 60. Each locks in a data rate. 24 is 240, 30 is 300, 60 is 600. Now my 80 gigabyte card holds 16 minutes. At 30, it's 33 minutes. At this setting, no crop at 24 and 30, crops at 60. Now, previous models required an external recorder to achieve the quality and color grading capability that settings like S-Log and HLG offered. Now, that's available internally. And there's no record clip limit at any setting. Gold star for that. I started with the overheating setting at standard, and with HDMI and external power connected, while I was setting up, the warning icon appeared after about 20 minutes in a 21°C room, and it shut down minutes later, before I even started recording. That's a first. But then, with the setting at high, nothing. I set up and shot my Fujifilm Preview 2022 video and didn't turn the camera off from setup through 2 takes of the 10-minute recording. Now, I did survive an overheating power down while recording part 1, but I've learned to turn the camera off a little more frequently. Overheating's an issue with the A7 IV, but it can be managed. No more issues recording this part. Let's compare H.26560 and H.264, all intra, side by side. And I'd love you to be able to see the difference, but by the time I output this video at 4K H.265 10-bit, you will be challenged to see the difference on YouTube. So both of these could be best. Record your own samples to determine which you will use. Switch to XAVCS HD for 120 frame, disappointingly at 100 megabits, 8-bit 420. A new menu setting, emphasized record display, puts a red frame around the display while you're recording. That's handy for vlogging. To record with the light of a single candle, I turned the ISO up to 51,200, still with S-Log, so this scene is graded. The custom white balance is 2700 with a slight green adjust, but there are no odd shifts, color cast, or excessive noise. I'm very pleased with these results. Face eye detect is still working well, even at this very low light level. Incidentally, audio, as is for all my work, is recorded externally. The camera supports USB-C power delivery, which means it can be both charged and powered with USB. That's what the little plug icon next to the battery status indicates. USB-C cable and wall plug adapter are included. And I was very pleased to find the more robust and reliable full-size HDMI port, but some implementations that have plagued Sony models since the addition of 4K support remain. When an external monitor is connected, the LCD monitor goes black if the HDMI info display is on. As a result, touch is disabled. HDMI settings are found in Settings External Output, instead of with the other video settings. A deep link switch would be ideal here. With info display on, the output goes up to 4K 60, another nice upgrade, which means in this video you're seeing the menus and screens in 4K. However, simultaneous recording on HDMI is only 4K 60. For 30 and 24, disable the Rec Media DUR HDMI output first, and then adjust the 4K output set to 24, 30, or 60, all 10-bit. I'm not sure why HDMI output can't just follow the record settings. Digital zoom is available, and as the sensor is oversampling for video, this might be an option that you'd consider. In 4K, S&Q video can record at frame rates from 1 to 60 frames per second and play at 24, 30, or 60. Data rates adjust depending on your selections. Combine 1 with 60 for 60 times fast, or 60 with 24 for 2.5 times slow. In HD, record up to 120 frames and play up to 120 as well. 120 combined with 24 is 5 times slow. Now, if that does not suit your time-lapse needs, Stills mode does have an intervalometer, but it doesn't output video files. File naming is very flexible. There are multiple formats, including a custom file name. And the camera can also be configured for USB streaming, including an option to stream 4K, but at 15 frames. To reduce flicker, the shutter duration can be set in 1/10 of a second increments. the audio level setting remains basic with arbitrary units, while everyone else is changing to set using decibels. To up the audio game, Sony's optional multi-interface shoe adapters provide better control and include 4-channel 24-bit digital audio recording. Oh, is there anything else wrong with video? And I get that all of these settings can be worthwhile, but I think it's a little too much, particularly with all of the if this not that exclusions. Simpler would be better. And yes, I know I can crop to get 17 by 9, but why no in-camera DCI setting? But still, Sony is the only manufacturer to provide shutter duration slower than the frame rate, down to 1/4 second. Always an interesting effect. Overall, an excellent video camera. During the initial setup, the camera prompts for the installation of the free Sony Imaging Edge mobile app and configures the camera with the app. You can configure GPS to be sent from the phone to the camera for geolocation. The Imaging Edge app is useful for transferring images to your phone and for remote shooting. Sony provides other downloadable desktop apps for image editing and tethered shooting. One more thing, as it's a little hard to find. Sony cameras have been very susceptible to attracting dust to the sensor, and there's a new setup option, anti-dust function, that will close the shutter when the camera is turned off. I am puzzled why that's not on by default. And I said the menu was improved. It is considerably better organized, but with 53 menu screens, most with 7 options, that's still a lot of settings to master. The downloadable PDF manual has nearly 500 pages and still feels a little skimpy on detail, but either way, it's a lot, and reinforces the range and flexibility that the A7 IV offers. Although it sounds intimidating, I found it fairly easy to get started and then pick up new tricks and capabilities as I went, so by the end of the 2-week review loan, feeling pretty comfortable. From custom menus, custom buttons, and custom settings on the mode dial, there are options that simplify the camera and tune it for your preferences and needs. That said, mastering the customizations also requires a learning curve. But don't overlook Sony's helpful A7 IV website for getting started and configuration tips. And there are also more general tips and lessons. And keep your eye on Sony's support page for firmware upgrades. Anything else wrong? The limited playback menu has no in-camera RAW conversion. The carousel of display screens is less functional than a customizable display. Yeah, not much. Can I think of any real reason not to get this camera? I can't. Other than nitpicking, as I said earlier, I really like this camera. It's a superb stills camera, and with the higher data rates and the eye detect improvement, it's a very good video camera with a slight tendency to overheat. After I return the demo to Sony, we'll be thinking hard about fitting the A7 IV and a few G-Master lenses in my 2022 budget. Or maybe I should just sell 3 of my Alphabet shares. As I said at the beginning, I'm not sponsored. Sony doesn't get to review my scripts or the video before I post, and my videos aren't interrupted by ads. And those decisions make this a better channel. But there is a financial impact. So those of you who support this channel as members have my most sincere thanks. If membership is for you, please use the join button below or subscribe. That remains your free option to access all my content. Thanks for watching. Stay safe.